Now we're going to talk to Steve Clemons. He's the Senior Fellow and Director of American Strategy Program at the New America Foundation. Steve's been on the program before. This time he's writing about the political assassination of Greg Craig. Those are strong words. Steve, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Hey, good to be with you.
All right, good to have you here. Steve, Greg Craig was the White House counsel. He stepped down. Why do you think he did? Let's start there.
Well, he's stepping down January 10th formally. So the letter of resignation, which is what makes this even more intriguing story than it would otherwise be, is that Greg Craig is still the White House counsel, and he will be through the end of the year and early in the beginning of next year. I think that he's stepping down in part for a couple of reasons. I think that there may be. The bottom line reason is that for whatever has happened, whatever in his portfolio, I think that this man who helped Barack Obama so much on so many different fronts in the campaign has somehow lost the support of the president. But the way this got expressed is one of the most disgusting, sets of things I've seen from an Obama administration, something you would expect from a Bush administration. But the thing that he's being sort of hanged out to dry for is the issues on Gitmo and not closing Guantanamo detention facility in the one-year timeline that the administration had promised. And people can debate whether that is legitimately Greg Craig's responsibility and whether he should be the one to be accountable for that or not, or whether that became a lever so that Rahm Emanuel and others could dislodge someone that they felt was a power center separate from them. So I think that there was more palace intrigue that had to do with Craig leaving the White House than the substance of Gitmo, but it's a debatable point.
Look, when you look at the substance of why he was basically let go, okay, so they didn't make the one-year deadline, but the Republicans did a great job of demagoguing on that issue. Now you could say, hey, that's Greg Craig's fault. He should have prepared for that in advance, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, you look at the Treasury Department, and they're filled to the brim with failure. And so,
exactly.
So,
well, I mean, the other part of it is that Greg Craig is dealing with the question, and I think he was right on track, with the question of how do you dispossess yourself of people that got, into Dick Cheney's dark side prisons? How do you bring them back and create on-ramps into the American legal system, into the American prison system, into communities that will accept these people who are innocent and will be released? Are they going to be released back to the Chinese if they're Uyghurs, if they're going to be, others? There are human rights questions involved. And so the country at the time this began seemed largely supportive of getting this closed and doing whatever it could to get to end this legal purgatory that the last administration had created. And I give Greg Craig an enormous amount of credit for looking at each and every one of these cases in a way in which they could have been dealt with. But the backlash came from the political sector, even from Democrats and communities that didn't want to necessarily to take these people in. And at that point, Rahm Emanuel and the President of the United States, with all due respect to President Obama, whom I like a great deal, were absent. They were AWOL. It's not your chief lawyer's job to be the guy who seduces Congress to behave responsibly. And that's allegedly why I don't believe, in the full veracity of these claims about him. He's not the politician. He's a lawyer.
So, Steve, let's get to the heart of it. Let's stop kidding around here. We're talking to Steve Clemons. He's from the New America Foundation. They obviously pushed him overboard. I'm not having that discussion anymore. Okay, so the question is why and who? And then there's a third question of why Obama allowed it. But what was it about Greg Craig that did not sit well with the other power centers in the White House?
Greg Craig is a guy, this is my own speculation. Greg Craig is a guy who in the campaign brought the Kennedy franchise to Obama. He was the fellow who made the deal happen with Ted Kennedy. He had a lot of gravitas and power inside the close inner circle of Obama land because of that. Number two, what is not known publicly to many people is that Barack Obama and Gregory Craig were the only two people among all of the central players in the Obama campaign who crafted and believed in the political strength of saying we're going to engage bad guys as well as good guys in the world. So when Obama was thinking about, the statement and contrasting himself with Hillary Clinton on foreign policy, say, without preconditions, I'll meet Ahmadinejad, I'll meet Castro, I'll meet Kim Jong-il. We've got to deal with our problems in the world, not wall ourselves off. the architect of that was Gregory Craig, and at the time, particularly with Iran, there was very little internal support for that message. And you know, despite David Plouffe's excellent book on the campaign that sort of paints a different picture, that simply is not true. And I think to some degree there is that element as well. When Gregory Craig came in, and the reason why he's not out in the foreign policy world is he wrote some very negative pieces about Hillary Clinton. He was a passionate opponent of Hillary Clinton at the time, you know, during the campaign, and there's some residue of ill will over that. So, you know, talking about somebody playing hardball during the campaign against their political opponent, and I think there's some ill will of that. But the bottom line, the fourth and I think the most serious thing is we've seen Rahm Emanuel, who's a capable chief of staff of the White House, nonetheless, you know, come along and you know, take down Tom Daschle in some ways, not, you know, help make an easy exit for him. We saw in Richard Wolff's book, Renegade, which was really an insider account of the Obama administration, that when the Illinois Senate seat opened up, that he wanted to export Valerie Jarrett to that because she was very close to Obama. So people who are very close to Obama, Rahm Emanuel has not been particularly close to them and trying to sort of dislodge them. And I think Greg Craig was one of those. And so in my view, whoever led those leaks, and I'm one who agrees with Nina Totenberg of NPR that thinks that Rahm was the only one who could have gotten away with this. And it raises the question of Obama's complicity himself. And it's kind of a sad way to change the team, but, you know, it is what it is.
So, but that gets to the heart of the issue here. So let's skip over to Obama here, because you answered question number 2, and it appears to be Rahm Emanuel who pushed them out. But
many people think so.
Right. Look, and as from what I've read, that is also my estimation. And again, here there's a little bit of speculation. We don't know it for a fact. Okay, I want to make that clear to the audience.
Right.
But we see Rahm Emanuel doing this over and over, with the pushing for the trigger in healthcare reform, and the list goes on and on. But always you come back to the question of, yeah, that's all fine and good, but why does Obama allow it? I mean, he's not a dumb guy. It's not like he's Bush getting led around by Cheney, doesn't know what the hell's going on. So what's Obama's motivation here?
Well, it's something that I think is a real mystery. It's a very strange thing when you see during the campaign David Plouffe say that their North Star was serious public policy. Their North Star was a no a-hole rule, you know, which he writes about in there, that they were not going to have leaks, they were not going to have the blame game inside the campaign. Now they get into governance, where they actually have power and responsibility, and these kinds of skill sets and tools are, you know, standard. And we heard Barack Obama just in Asia yesterday say, you know, how disturbed he was by leaks about the McChrystal report and Carl Eichenberry's report on Afghanistan, and that he said that these were firing offenses. How do you actually go about doing that when people at the highest level of the White House are doing this as standard fare? I think it's a real problem. And the other thing about Rahm, you know, who's a, you know, definitely a street fighter, and he's very capable and brilliant in many ways, and there are certain things I do admire about Rahm, but he seems to be pretty darn good at undermining Democrats, and I haven't seen him undermining many Republicans, you know. And so to some degree, this intrigue that's being created is being created around inside a White House that was supposed to bring a very different kind of politics to Washington. And when you look at the Greg Craig affair, you realize, that bubble's just been punctured.
Yeah, you know, everything we see points to the facts that you're mentioning here, okay? But it does not address the question of what is going through Obama's head. Because why did he pick? He knows what Rahm Emanuel is about. When he picked him, I said, uh-oh. And we all know what Rahm Emanuel is about. And he has this reputation for being tough, etc. I've never seen him be tougher with Republicans in my life. He's always tough on Democrats.
I think maybe you could speculate that on one hand, Obama wanted to be the good cop in things and felt he needed a bad cop, someone who was going to be able to, you know, Rahm had a reputation quite different than Tom Daschle, who was another lead contender for that job, of being tougher at the edges, someone who could you know, really ram things in and you know, turn out results. And I think that was the impression that Obama had, that Obama felt as confident, as self-confident he is on so many different jobs and policy issues, that he felt that he needed someone who had political, practical policy experience, who knew the whole field much better than Obama did. And so he thought he was getting those things in sort of a harsher variant than he would have in Tom Daschle by selecting Rahm Emanuel as the chief
So,
of
you know
staff.
what, that's a
I'm
great...
just speculating, but
No.
I think that, on some level you have to say, what results has Rahm delivered? And I say, there's not much.
Steve, that's a great analysis, and I think I largely agree with you as to why he selected Rahm in the first place. But, finally here in the limited time we have, now that he's seen this in action, right, and Rahm at every turn seems to be pushing him to accept the reality of Washington. Okay, but, we can't get it done. We can't get a public option done. We can't get this done. You have to accept that the Republicans are going to fight you on this, so you have to concede this, and you have to concede that. Now that he's seen that, and that it's not that toughness that gets the job done, rather than it's concession after concession, and not pushing for real change, why is he still accepting it? Why is he still letting Rahm Emanuel run the show?
That is the question that I just don't have a good answer for. The night before the inauguration, I ran into Rahm Emanuel at a party. I congratulated him, said, it's going to be tough going. He thanked me, and he said, all we're going to be able to affect at the beginning are the optics of things, that, we weren't going to really be able to do the substance. And, it made a lot of sense because there's so many constraints that Obama inherited on the national security and in the economic portfolios from the Bush administration that you can sort of make a narrative that I don't fully subscribe to. I think presidents are presidents, and they've got a lot of I don't buy this time that he hasn't had enough time. Most presidents in their first year made most of their major definitive calls, and so to some degree they did have a very tough road to go, and I think that that's one of the reasons why he brought Emanuel in. But why isn't he changing the game yet? And he's changing people who are high quality and were delivering and did structurally for both his campaign and I think for the country too. I mean, I have to give Greg Craig a certain portion, for anyone who wants to, pour water on Obama getting the Nobel Peace Prize, changing the way the rest of the world looks at us and giving them a hope and expectation and a changing in that kind of optical sense is an enormously huge accomplishment. But the guy who was the architect of it was Greg Craig. So, when you see him expelled in the manner in which he is, in such a disrespectful, gross and seedy and vile manner, you do want to say, where is the Barack Obama we all thought we were getting that would have turned up his nose and said, as he did in the campaign a couple of times to David Plouffe and David Axelrod, I'm not that kind of guy. I don't want to be in the gutter, and I don't want any of my people in the gutter.
Steve,
he's not making those calls right now, and hopefully he will.
We got about 30 seconds left. You said there that Emanuel told you that we're going to change the optics, but not really the substance.
Well, it's not that he didn't want to change the substance. It's that the substantive issues were so hard to get to and the constraints so high. So at the beginning, all they could, I've blogged about this, all they could basically said, all we could really affect are the optics of things.
What, throughout all of Obama's term or in the first year?
It was a casual cocktail party discussion, but it was a very interesting comment to make. And given the fact that I do a lot on the foreign policy, national security side, I largely agreed with that on the front end because there was so much doubt and cynicism and real dislike about the United States that changing the posture of Obama was there, and that's what they did. And whereas my criticism is that they haven't been able to get to the substance of things. But, yeah, he did say optics, that specific word, yes.
Steve Clemons from the New America Foundation, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Young Turks.
If you like this clip, you'll love the whole show. You can watch that at theyoungturks.com.